When it comes to women's health, there are a lot of resources for us from a mainstream medical point of view. It's a little harder, perhaps, to find things that fit that functional, holistic, alternative point of view when it comes to women's health and well-being. And this includes strategies for nourishing ourselves, as well as strategies to take care of ourselves, and how things can and do change along the spectrum of aging when it comes to womanhood. And so today I am absolutely delighted to have my guest, Kate Strakosch, with us. And she is a nourishment and intimacy coach who believes in both the inner and outer connections of wellness and radiance. She's the owner and founder of Sunshine Kate's Wellness Center in New Jersey. She has a degree in whole foods-based nutrition from Bastyr University and has become an esthetician in order to also understand the relationship between skin health and the inner workings of the body. From there, she took a deep dive into many of the energetic and emotional layers of the body through sacred sexuality, somatic therapy, empowerment coaching. She's just got that whole package all put together, and she is going to share her beautiful wisdom with us so that we can learn more, know more, and help support ourselves. Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mira. I'm so excited for us to explore this vast conversation.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to ask how you got into this line of work.
Okay. It's been a long and windy and beautiful journey.
It usually is windy, isn't it?
There was never a straight trajectory. When I was a teenager, I became very curious about holistic health. And at that point, it was really when the internet was just emerging and Google wasn't a thing just yet. So I found myself going to the library, picking up magazines, finding few and far natural health stores. And I actually, through the course of divine experiences, was introduced to Bastyr University, which is a natural medicine school out in Seattle. And I knew I didn't want to study at a big university, and it was just an immediate yes. So long story short, I moved to Seattle and I studied nutrition, and that opened up my eyes and world to so many different approaches. And that experience really integrated herbal medicine. It integrated exercise science, where I was rock climbing all over Washington State and snowshoeing, and then just exploring all sorts of aspects of spirituality. And so at that point, I began to understand that nutrition was much more than choosing the foods that we eat, that we put in our body. And during that time, I was having two different experiences in my brain and in my body. I was extracting all this information that I was studying and following a certain eating protocol, but my body was reacting in a way that I was not having healthy bleeds every month. I was not on a healthy menstrual cycle. I was experiencing a lot of pelvic pain. Fast forward to a few years later, where in the meantime, I did dabble in conventional medicine. I tried birth control pill for a very short period of time. My body rejected it. And a doctor was advocating going on metformin, and it was a no. And that was really the first time of understanding the true yeses and nos in my body. So I worked with a naturopathic doctor who introduced me to two things in a very short period of time: to castor oil packs for liver drainage and detoxification, as well as my lower belly, and introduced me to a book called Feeding Your Demons. And it was an Eastern philosophy book that focused on the emotions and the stagnant emotions that we find in different areas of our body.
Wow.
And at that point, the rabbit hole opened, and I really took that dive, that curve on the journey to understanding the emotional component and how that could really affect our physical health. And I started to make some different changes within eating, focus more on gluten-free, But I really started to understand that there was a lot more in the way of how we can learn from our body. So went deeper and then started exploring Yoni steaming. And the first time I had actually done the steam was at a Korean spa where there were signs for hip baths. There are three main points in the world where we can trace the steaming from: ancient China, Asia, ancient Egypt and Africa, and Central America. And
Oh, really?
each of those cultures have different names that represent it, but all approaching it in a similar way. So I was at a Korean spa with Korean news channels everywhere, wrapped up in this body sauna that was so hot. And they steam with mugwort, which is an herb that is believed to enhance vitality. It can be applied in different applications, but from that approach, really enhancing vitality in the body. The experience itself was very overstimulating, but I slept so well that night and woke up feeling this sense of deep connection and warmth in my body. And I bled in the next 2 weeks, basically, and it was a different color blood than I had seen in a very long time. And at that point, then I looked into how I could really understand more and more about this work. And then that path I've never looked back on. I found a practitioner who actually was trained in the ancient Egyptian method, and I studied under her, and it was life-changing. And what I found from that, and this is just a very long-winded answer, is through the steaming for myself, but then as I started to really integrate that into my practice with clients, so much of the body can speak to us. And at that point, that was when I started to see different pieces of their stories come through: trauma, different experiences, traumatic birth, sexual trauma, disconnection from the body. And then that led me into going deeper into the somatic work and the sacred sexuality. Looking back, it has just been incredible how all these pieces have connected and threaded in a way that I never would have imagined. It has not always been the easiest or the lightest journey, but for myself, it's been so empowering to rekindle this trust within my body and to know that through food, through herbs, through practices where we can really tend to being present and listening, any relationship within the body can shift and can transform into a very healing and connected one. And so that's my life's work at this point, being an advocate with clients to do just that.
Wow. And so that sounds really amazing. And I love the fact that even just one treatment, one Yoni steam for you sounds like it was very life altering in terms of how your body resettled and what was going on. So I'm curious, is there an age range that it's best for? Is it okay to do it if you're postmenopausal, pre-pubescent? Like, how does that work?
I love those questions. So there are limited contraindications why a woman, a female, wouldn't or should not do it. First steam could start as soon as a young woman starts to bleed.
Okay.
And in many cultures, that's actually approached as a ritual for within her welcoming her first bleed as well. I've actually had a few moms bring their daughters in to do dual steams next to each other, and just to notice, and it's usually been the first steam for the mom as well, but celebrating that connection. So a woman can start as early as that, and then until she takes her last breath on this earth in her body. And it's really limitless with the possibilities. The times that we don't steam is when we actually are bleeding. If there's an IUD present, because it's thought that the steam can travel as high as the cervix, because it's a very gentle, low steam. I love to use crock pots, which you can really regulate the heat. With that warmth, it can dislodge, not always. And so I'll just use that as a precaution. And if the IUD comes loose, it can cause some tearing, but it is so therapeutic when a woman actually has her IUD removed to do as recovery and a very soothing approach.
Yeah.
Yes. And even if there's been any scar tissue through that experience, dynamic for the maiden into the deepest wise years of womanhood, where there are different herbs, everything is customized, but different herbs work with the different phases of the journey. And so there are some that really can support balancing and regulating a menstrual cycle, can support fertility, very soothing postpartum. And then an underlooked population that I really am speaking up more and more about is moving into perimenopause and how beneficial it can be during that time. And then very supportive as well during menopause and all the messages that come through the body, if it's vaginal dryness, if there's some pain with intercourse, and then also thinking about the emotions that come through that it may feel like a grieving period of letting go and moving into this next passage. But with that, celebrating the wisdom that's extracted along the way. And so there's beauty in honoring the changes that come along with that. And then beyond that, years past that point where coming to basically connect and sit with the body, where there's this gentle heat, like I mentioned, is such an act of self-care. It's a ritual where on a physical level can really support lymphatic drainage, can actually really be supportive with urinary health, because the pelvic bowl is so connected to endocrine health, urinary.
So for someone who gets a lot of UTIs or things like that, it can be very supportive and very helpful.
And with that, tend to lean more towards sea vegetables and seaweeds, nettle, calendula, beautiful herbs that can be nourishing, that antibacterial, but dynamic with urinary health. And then digestive health as well can be soothing for a very fiery system as well as a very stagnant system. And it can also be beneficial if there's nothing, quote unquote, out of balance in the body and just craving this connection, because the heat, like I mentioned, whether the cervix is in place or the energetics of the cervix, that's the base of the whole vagus nerve that runs from the brain down through the body. For men, and I do work with men as well, the prostate is the base for them. But when we can stimulate and activate the vagus nerve, it activates the parasympathetic state. And what is that? It's healing, it's rest, it's receptivity. And so often when clients, if they're actually coming into my practice to do it, they have one expression on their face. You can see a lot of tension maybe coming in. Afterwards, when they leave, the beautiful glow. There's just this exhale in the body and weaving that place of all the busyness of the mind back into the feelings, back into the welcoming this energetic field to be in a state of healing and the capacity to open to that.
That sounds so wonderful. And I love how the thought that's supportive for the vagus nerve, because I think for so many people, there is that disconnect. They're not breathing well. They're not taking the time to be in that parasympathetic state. So digestion's off, sleep is off, energy's off. And so to have something like this, which can help balance the vagal nerve starting at that root end, sounds really amazingly supportive. Now, how would someone, for example, you're in New Jersey. So how does someone find a practitioner like you? Because, for example, I'm in Texas, you're in New Jersey. It'd be really hard for me. I can't come see you to do that unless I hop on an airplane. How does that work?
What's encouraging, Mira, is there actually, I'm noticing even in nearly a decade, the growing practitioners around the States and around the world. And that's hopeful that this is catching on, that it's not just the trend and we're honoring that ancient wisdom. But I've also noticed throughout the country, more and more practitioners integrating it into their practices. So acupuncturist, thinking in terms of Chinese medicine, body workers, the different massage therapists, all sorts of different ways of weaving it together, but the recommendation would be to actually look up certified steam practitioners, start researching Yoni steam, and for men, it's lingam steam practitioners.
Okay.
And one thing just to note with that, as this has become more well-known and gained more popularity, there are some things to look out for. And one of those would be really having a conversation with a potential practitioner and just getting a sense of what their approach is and honoring that, especially if someone is curious about this and maybe there's some apprehension, some nervousness, but just to see if it's a good match. But then also to inquire about what kind of herbs they're using or sourcing their herbs, as well as what kind of throne. I call it a steam throne. They can be steam chairs, steam stools, because there are quite a bit of plastic chairs out there.
Oh.
That is an absolute no for every single reason. Someone actually gave me a plastic throne when I was just getting started, and it was lined with the plastic, and you pour the warm water and the herbs inside and you're seated on top. I never used it because that is the opposition of what we're trying to do. It is a form of drainage in the body. So that can really be a turnoff in many ways, but actually causing more harm than good. And then in terms also with the herbs, we want to make sure that they are clean. They're as organic as possible, but
Sure, 'cause
also
it's going into very sensitive tissue. And I also, for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, plastic, when it's heated, releases molecules. And so that's why I'm guessing that's why it's not such a good choice for this, that you want something like wood or possibly some sort of earth-made material like clay or whatever that's going to be fine when it's heated and steamed, and that steam is then rising up to those sensitive tissues.
exactly. Because the heat source, like I mentioned, I love to use a crock pot, stainless steel bowls, a source that is clean by nature, but because it's emitting that heat, that we don't want to cause any counter interference or interference with the plastic and activating. We're being exposed to that enough in other ways. And then with the herbs as well, one thing to just keep in mind, because the vaginal tissue is so porous, it's so sensitive, that we just want to be using herbs and not adding essential oils. Essential oils are beautiful in ways that we could maybe infuse with a carrier oil and use elsewhere on our skin, or diffuse, or even there are so many different possibilities when someone is actually in a steam session, what they can do. One might be doing a little meditation, activating the senses through smelling. Humming is beautiful because that activates the vagus nerve.
Vagus nerve, yeah.
Sometimes it's a matter of praying, it's a matter of quiet stillness. But with the essential oils, it's actually too concentrated for the body. And very often the tissue is more sensitive than not. So we want to err on the side of just being really gentle. And if someone is researching a steam practitioner, just inquiring again, where are you getting your herbs from? Is it a blend that is one size fits all, or is it customized? And that's something that I really advocate on, because we are all so different. And so making sure that there aren't any allergies or contraindications as to why someone would not and need to avoid different herbs.
No, I love that too, because it sounds like you've talked about how there are many different life stages or also health conditions that might benefit from this practice. And so I can see how there are certain herbs that are perhaps more soothing or more attuned to different areas of the body. And so utilizing those could be such a wonderful support in order to do that. If someone wanted to do this practice at home, is that something that you can learn to do? Do you help coach, guide them in that?
I do help. I do one-on-one sessions, and I also will help them look into local resources for supplies. So I have a friend here in New Jersey. He's a woodworker, and he and I build the thrones, which are about,
Wow.
and I love it. It's the very first time, my uncle was building them with me for a while, and then he retired from that work. But this lovely friend, the very first time, he said, "So is this like an aromatherapy experience?" And I said, "Yeah, that's pretty much what it is." But the last time we made a batch, he said, "I've been looking into this a lot." He got on the internet and he was comparing all different sizes, but we are very mindful about the wood that we're using. We use cedar wood, which has just such a spiritual connection to wisdom. I make a customized crystal grid anytime someone orders the throne from us, but I make it comfortable. So it's about the size of an end table. And then we carve out a hole in the center, and there's a shelf beneath that, which is where the steam pot rests. And then there's an open back so the cord can run behind.
Sure.
And it really accommodates different sized bodies. So it makes it comfortable that someone doesn't have to hold themselves up, because part of the intention is really feeling held and relaxed. It's almost as if you're taking a restorative or gentle yoga practice where you are not doing any effort, but you're allowing the earth or the props beneath you. And it's that same approach that then on top of the wood, you can bundle up towels, you can use blankets. Some people like to roll some pillows up, your blankets underneath the hips, and just savoring in that approach. But the problem with the end table size, it's bulky, and I have shipped them elsewhere and it can become expensive. So there are some amazing woodworkers around the country that I've learned about. So I can guide clients how to do that. And if that's not an option, there's a very simple way of basically having that crock pot or a bowl. The problem with the bowl, though, it doesn't keep the heat source generating for more than a few minutes. So then you're standing up and you're adding more warm water. But you have that nice crock pot, and then having some, I say, yoga blocks and blankets around to kneel on or to rest on. I've noticed and have received some creative pictures from clients that have gotten started. One was a camp seat, the camp chair that she cut out the center from. That works. Step stools can work. But the big takeaway is, if you were to do it at home, do some research first to make sure, because again, I think when we hear Yoni steam, there's this visualization of this geyser heat coming up, and less is more. It's almost as if you're watching this soup pot begin to simmer and you can see that gentle heat coming up. But if you place your palm over it, it's not going to make you want to pull your hand away, that it's inviting, it's warming, it's not burning. And that's the template, that's a cadence that we keep the entire time. And it is just amazing what it can facilitate as entry points into that awareness in the body. I didn't mention this as much, but also not only digestive health, but recovering from different forms of rectal cancer and healing. If someone has undergone, I've worked with a vast number of clients who've experienced different kinds of trauma and cancer and the surgery, but also even with hemorrhoids as well.
Wow.
Any time of inflammation, of pain, that we can bring some soothing, gentle heat, it's a warm welcome in that way.
So I love that there's so many different uses for it, from just wanting that relaxation to deep healing. How often and for how long? Or is that one of those things where, like, it depends?
It can depend. There is not so much an upper limit for most people to do the steams. If it becomes a regular practice as a way of calming down, some clients actually do it before they go to bed. I have a client, she has a steam throne set up in her bedroom, and she does a little chamomile lavender steam and then goes to bed, and it's her way of just shutting off her brain. The upper limit would be if you feel that the body's detoxing too quickly. That might mean that feeling really dehydrated. Not that the heat can actually travel up to your liver, but it can activate more of a detox response in the body. So we just want to make sure, basic focus with any kind of detox, hydrating,
Sure.
Tuning into how can we support binding up any of those toxins that the body is releasing, because this is stimulating to the lymphatic system, just making sure that we are facilitating that so the toxins are not going back into the bloodstream. And some clients do notice that they get a little headache afterwards, or they feel really tired. It's not a negative piece at all. It's the body's way of communicating. That might be a starting point to refocus and to slow down.
And again, that comes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. So many of us live in that, fight, flight, fear mode that we forget our bodies deeply need that parasympathetic shift into rest. And when they don't get enough of that, the body probably learns that it has to dump as quickly as possible because it's here. And so I can see how having a restorative practice like this that you engage in on a regular basis teaches your body that it's okay. You don't have to let go all at once.
And less is more, which is swimming upstream in the culture that we live in. But how beautiful that we can do something like that and notice the subtleties begin to shift in the body. And even integrate the emotions that might come through. I've had all sorts of experiences with clients. Someone met with her attorney, signed her final paper of her divorce, and she knew the day that her divorce was being finalized, and she booked her appointment. But for that, it was this real deep, energetic and emotional purge and release. But she knew that she needed to rest later that day and the next day. And that was so empowering for her to honor that piece. Some clients come in we do this work remotely too, because of death, because of someone passing, pregnancy losses of all sorts. And to give ourselves that space, even when clients are reaching out saying, okay, how long should I anticipate? Well, yes, there might be a time frame of the physical steam, 20, 30, 45 minutes. The body normally tells us when it's complete, when it just feels like, okay, that's enough for now, but not to turn off that heat source, get up, and then carry on with the day, to give that space for integration. And that integration is that space of alchemy. It's where everything starts to come together.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as if speaking to you as an expert, but if you spend this time really resourcing, preparing this beautiful meal, but then you eat it while you're driving in traffic, how can your body actually notice and your senses experience all the nourishment, all the flavors, all the textures, all the tastes? Your body doesn't even register that food to a degree.
Yeah. So if someone wanted to do something to support themselves and begin to relax and activate their parasympathetic nervous system, like what would be a really good place to start?
Beautiful. A simple and accessible practice would be slowing down to breathe. Slowing down to breathe. Even when you're driving in the car. Yes, you're not closing your eyes per se, but just taking that moment of just repositioning yourself and noticing your body's posture, taking that breath to get a sense of where you're feeling it and how you're feeling it. I don't know if you can hear the snoring, but my one dog is sitting on a chair now next to me and she's snoring. And she's such a great reminder, because when she begins to settle into that relaxation, she lets that sigh out. And dogs and animals are such great teachers. We're mammals too, but they sigh, they release it, and then they give themselves that space to rest. But we can gain a lot of awareness when we take that breath, and when we can notice and find that compassion as to, I really have not been breathing deeply. You might notice that subtle temperature change in your cheeks, in your belly, in your hands. That could be one basic step, as simple as that sounds. Another way would be getting outside, fresh air, even in the coldest of cold places during the winter, but breathing in that air and noticing how the body responds. That contrast, yes, when it's cold, our bodies are warm, so beautiful, but that activates that response as well. really tend to make an effort to simplify these practices as much as possible. We can make them very elaborate, and there can be a setup. There can be this whole practice of, okay, this is my relaxation time. This is my time of connecting. But we can work in segments throughout the day.
I love that. That's so wonderful. And I also love that, breathing is so accessible. And we think we do it all the time, because it's an autonomic nervous system function. But we forget that we're not breathing. We're not deep breathing into the system. And especially when we go outside, most of us live a lot of our life inside four walls of a home, if we're lucky. So we're not getting that fresh air and that exchange that we really need. So I love that you recommend that as a support for people. Kate,
Thank you.
you've shared so much amazing information. This has been really wonderful. And if someone wanted to connect with you, how would they do that?
I would be honored. Any questions, any guidance to work together? So my website is Sunshine Kate's, and with an S, and you can email me directly from there. I have lots of information about this on the site as well. There are all sorts of blogs, guidance. You can connect if you want to get a sense of my personality. My website does represent it, but on social media, I am on Instagram under Sunshine Kate's as well. And you could subscribe. I send out newsletters with local far shares if anyone would like to be part of a virtual journey or just getting some tips and tools from my ever-changing world. But I would love to connect with anyone that's curious about this work. And thank you for letting me be part of your community here.
Oh, I'm so glad that we talked. I know you and I had talked a little bit before, which is why I invited you to come and share your beautiful wisdom and your lovely energy. And I've learned so much from you. This has really been eye-opening. I had no idea about the different reasons why someone might do this or some of the different things to incorporate. And so it's just been really fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing. It's been amazing to talk with you.
Thank you, Mira. It was a gift.
Absolutely. So for everyone who's listening, I will put all of the links down below. I'm even going to put in a link to the book that Kate mentioned, Feeding Your Demons, just in case that struck a chord for you as well. And so it'll all be down there when this posts. I encourage you to check it out. I strongly encourage you to connect with Kate and learn from her. I think there's a lot to be said there about this beautiful practice that more of us need to be doing. So thanks for joining us and have a healthy day, folks. Bye.